This is your host, Danny, and this is Grammar from English Plus Podcast. In today's episode, we're going to continue what we started talking about in Chapter 2 last time about the perfect and the perfect progressive tenses. Today, we will put the present perfect head-to-head with the simple past to understand the differences between them. We will talk about the present perfect progressive, the past perfect, and the past perfect progressive. So there's a lot to talk about, so let's get to it. But before we start, let me tell you that you can find a very useful link in the description of this episode that will take you to my website, EnglishPlusPodcast.com. There, you will find a post I created for this episode where you can get to practice what you're learning. It's very important to practice what you're learning, especially in grammar, because if you don't try it yourself, all the information I'm telling you will be just theoretical. You need to practice it. You need to get your hands dirty to understand grammar, to be able to use it in your everyday language. That is about the first link you can find in the description of the episode. The second link is very important to me and to the whole learning community. It will take you to my Patreon page. Go to my Patreon page, support me on Patreon to help me to continue creating content for this podcast and for a lot of other things that I'm creating on my website for the learning community in general. The learning community will be grateful, I will be grateful, and there's only one way for this podcast to continue, and that is through your support. Today we have 15 patrons, which is a great thing. I am so grateful that I have 15 patrons, but I have to tell you that this is not enough. We need more just to break even. The target is to get to 50 patrons by the end of the year so that we can break even. I can cover the expenses of the podcast. As you can see, till now, I'm not adding any advertisements. I don't want to have to add advertisements, but eventually I might have to. And I know that this is going to disrupt the flow of the episodes and you're not going to like it, but please help me out so that we don't get to this day where we have to add advertisements. I'm counting on your generosity and your care for this learning community. So take the link, it's in the description of the episode. Take the link, go to my Patreon page and contribute the minimum amount or as much as you can to help us survive. And later on, we will grow and thrive and become an independent learning community, which is our ultimate goal, of course. And now, without further ado, let's start talking about grammar for today. Present perfect versus present simple is coming up next. So let's see how we can differentiate between these two tenses. That's coming up next. So it's kind of confusing. You say it is present perfect, but then when you talk about something, it is like talking about something that happened in the past, but you still use the present perfect. Well, why? Why don't we just use the simple past? The simple past talks about something that happened in the past. So why do we use the present perfect to talk about things that happened in the past? Well, we got a couple of reasons. The first thing, we use the present perfect to talk about past events when there is no specific mention of time. I'll give you an example. I've met Linda, but I haven't met her husband. Have you met him? Now, in all of these, I have met Linda. I haven't met her husband. Have you met him? There is no specific mention of time. And that is one thing you need to keep in mind that enables you to use the present perfect. Or you can use the present perfect to express something like that. But you have to understand the underlying meaning for using the present perfect. Because to be honest, in some cases, you can say, I met Linda, but I didn't meet her husband. Did you meet him? Even if we don't specify the time, the past simple is possible. But why do we prefer to use the present perfect in this case? Because there is a hidden link to the present. I've met Linda. It's like I'm telling you, I know her. I haven't met her husband. I don't know him. Have you met him? Do you know him? So if you have this underlying meaning, if this is what you really want to say, use the present perfect. It's much better than just using the simple past. But of course, I'm not saying that grammar is free of technical things. No, of course, you will have to be careful. Here, the technical thing is that I didn't use the time. I didn't specify the time in the past. Because if you do, you will have to use the simple past. Because if you do, it's like you're telling me, or actually you're kind of focusing on when this thing happened. So there is no big relation to the present anymore. There's no need to use the present perfect, and actually it's grammatically incorrect to use the present perfect. If you say, for example, I met Helen yesterday at a party, her husband was there too, but I didn't meet him. Did you meet him at the party? Now here we're talking about specifics, and specifics started when I mentioned the time. The simple past is used when there is a specific mention of time, because here it's different from the first one. Here I'm talking about details that happened in the past. And we will see that this is very common. We start talking about one thing in the present perfect, and then we continue on talking about the details in the past simple. For example, remember we talked last time that we can use the present perfect to talk about lifetime experiences, about things you have done and things you haven't done. For example, if you say, I have been to Paris. Well, here you're just telling me that you know this place, you've been there. Very good. But now if you want to go to details and tell me about the things you did and the things you saw, etc. in Paris, you will have to use the past simple because that is details. Now we're going to the detail level in the past, so that is past simple. For example, I've been to Paris. I went there last year. I saw the Eiffel Tower. I saw the Champs-Élysées, etc. Here, when you talk about details, you use the simple past because the focus is on the past, no relation to the present anymore. Well, this might be a little bit more advanced than you would like, but it is important, as I always say, to understand why we use these tenses, because these are just tools for you to speak and write, to really understand the language, not just use it mechanically. I mean, using the language mechanically is important and will help you understand the language and use the language up to a point. But if you want to go beyond that point, you really have to understand the underlying, the hidden meanings of the language. And grammar is all about that. Grammar is not this boring topic that nobody wants to learn about because it's just like mathematics. 1 + 1 = 2. No, definitely not. In grammar, 1 + 1 equals a lot of things. Depends on what you have in mind. Depends on what you want to say. So, to sum up here, we use the present perfect when we talk about the past, but we don't mention the time in the past. We use the present perfect for that. If you mention the time, that means you're interested in details that happened in the past. So here we use the past simple. Now, in another common situation where we have to know whether we should use the present perfect or the simple past, it's when we talk about situation that began in the past but continue to the present or not. Because here also it is a technical thing, and it is important to understand why or when we use the present perfect or the simple past, because that will mean something else. I'll give you an example. Sam has been a math teacher for 10 years. He loves teaching. Now, from just saying that, what do you think? Is he still teaching? Is Sam still teaching? Obviously, yes. Because I use the present perfect. The present perfect is used for situations that began in the past and continue to the present. That's the meaning of the present perfect. But if I say, Jim was a teacher for 10 years, now he is an engineer. Even if you don't continue, if you just say Jim was a teacher for 10 years, what do you think? Is Jim teaching now? Is Jim still a teacher? Obviously not, because we use the simple past. Jim was a teacher for 10 years, maybe from 2000 to 2010. Now he's an engineer. So you don't have to continue if you don't want to. Just using simple past in this case lets people understand or helps people understand that this is in the past. It has no continuation in the present. If you say Jim has been a teacher for 10 years, that means he's still a teacher. If you say Jim was a teacher for 10 years, that means he was a teacher for some time, but not anymore. So again, remember, it's not about what it is. It is about what you want to say. It's not what the simple past is about or the present perfect is about. It's about what you want to say, what you want to mean. And if you really understand the details about those tenses, you will save a lot of words and a lot of explanation because you just use the right tense and the meaning is there. You don't have to follow it up with another sentence maybe to explain what you want to say, because what you said is clear. You just use the simple past. That means it's over. This person is not a teacher anymore. Or if you use the present perfect, that means this person is still teaching just by using the tense. You don't have to say it. You don't have to continue with a couple of more maybe sentences to explain what you want to say. Just use the right tense and your meaning will be clear. So that is about the present perfect and the past simple. I hope you understand that. And don't forget, go to the website, do the exercises there because that will help you really understand what we're talking about here. When you practice it yourself, when you make mistakes, and after you make the mistakes, you realize, oh, that was a mistake because of this, because of that. That is the more important part of learning. You learn from your own mistakes. That's about the present perfect versus the past simple. Now we will move on to talk about the present perfect progressive. That's coming up next. Now what about the present perfect progressive? Now the present perfect progressive is very similar to the present perfect, to be honest. It also talks about something that started in the past and still continues to the present. But there are slight differences here. And let me start by comparing the present perfect progressive with the present progressive. Now, if I say, for example, right now, I'm sitting at my desk. Well, that is the present progressive. It expresses an activity in progress right now. It's not my intention here to talk about when it started and how long it has been happening. This is not the focus. This is not what I want to focus on. This is not what I mean to say. But if I want to say it otherwise, I can say I have been sitting at my desk since 7 o'clock. I have been sitting here for 2 hours. Now here, the focus is different. Now, I'm still sitting at my desk, right? But this is not what I want to say. This is not what I want to tell you. I want to focus on another idea. I want to tell you what I've been doing for the past 2 hours. That's what I want to say. And that's when present perfect progressive comes handy. When you want to talk about something that's been happening recently, and maybe it's still in progress. We will see that sometimes it's not exactly in progress, but it is still happening. Just like the present continuous. Remember when we talked about the present continuous, we said that the action you're talking about doesn't have to be happening at the moment of speaking, but it should be happening around now. For example, when we say, I'm looking for a job. Now, I'm looking for a job. That doesn't mean I'm looking for a job right now, but I'm looking for a job around now. And the same goes here. But don't worry, I'll give you a couple of examples so that you understand it better. But now let's get back to this example I just told you about. I have been sitting at my desk since 7 o'clock. I have been sitting here for 2 hours. Now, the present perfect progressive expresses how long an activity has been in progress. In other words, it expresses the duration of an activity that began in the past and continues in the present. Now we use time expressions that just like we did with the present perfect, that's for since and for. We use things like all day, all morning, all week. I've been working all day. I've been working all morning. I've been working all week, etc. That's fine. Or it's been raining all day. It's still raining right now. But that's not what I want to tell you because that's obvious. You look outside the window and you can see it's raining. Maybe that's what I want to say. If you just want to say that it is raining right now, use the present progressive, no problem. But if you want to focus on the duration of this activity, use the present perfect continuous or progressive instead. It has been raining all day. And talking about that, let me just mention quickly how we can form the present perfect progressive. It's very simple. The main verb is always in ing, so you don't have to worry about the main verb. And you always have to use have been, or obviously has been if you're using he, she, or it. For questions, you just invert the order. You say, have you been, has she been, etc. And for negatives, you just add not to have. I have not been sitting at my desk since 7 o'clock. I've been sitting at my desk since 9 o'clock. So here, that is about the form, but more importantly, the meaning. It has been raining all day. That is also an expression we can use. Now, that brings me to another point that I talked about earlier when I talked about the present simple and the present progressive. We talked about stative verbs. You have to be careful. When we talked about stative verbs, I gave you a lot of examples, a lot of verbs that are considered stative verbs, and you need to understand that these verbs are not usually used in continuous, and that means any continuous or any progressive tense. Whether it is present, past, present perfect progressive, or past perfect progressive, these verbs are not usually used in any progressive tense. You have to put that in mind. I'll give you an example now. I have known Alex since he was a child. Well, obviously that is so true because my son's name is Alex. But that's not the point. I have known Alex since he was a child. What does that mean? That means since that time until now, I still know Alex. Why don't we use the present perfect continuous? Why can't I say, I have been knowing Alex since he was a child? Well, because the verb itself is non-progressive or stative. So remember, the present perfect progressive is not used with non-progressive or stative verbs such as know. To express the duration of a situation that began in the past and continues to the present, only the present perfect is used here. We use the present perfect, not the present perfect continuous or the present perfect progressive. All right? But now let's take a look at another situation where both the present perfect simple and progressive are possible and the meaning is not so different. The focus is a little bit different, but the meaning is not so different. For example, if I say, how long have you been living here? Or how long have you lived here? What is the difference between these two questions? And more importantly, are they both correct? Another example, Ben has been wearing glasses since he was 10. Or Ben has worn glasses since he was 10. What's the big deal? Are they both correct? That's the most important thing. And if they're both correct, what's the difference between them? Well, I'll have to say that for some verbs, not all verbs, for some verbs, the idea of how long can be expressed by either tense, the present perfect progressive or the present perfect simple. Now here, how long have you been living here or how long have you lived here is almost the same. They have the same meaning. Ben has been wearing glasses since he was 10 and Ben has worn glasses since he was 10 is almost the same. Either tense can be used only when the verb expresses the duration of present activities or situations that happen regularly, usually or habitually, just like live, work, teach, study, wear glasses, play chess, etc. We're talking about things that happen regularly, usually, and the situation started a long time ago and still continues to the present. I've been playing chess for over 30 years. So that is something regular. That is something habitual that I do. But I can say I have played chess for over 30 years. The same meaning, no problem. So only with some verbs, not all verbs. Remember, with some verbs, both are possible and the meaning is the same. The only nuance here is the focus, but I don't want you to care about it. I'm just going to mention it. I want you to forget about it. If you use the present perfect continuous, you are focusing more on the duration of the time. If you're using the present perfect simple, you're focusing more on the action itself. But forget about that. That's not even important. For now, you can consider both of them have the same meaning. And that leaves me with one last point we need to know about to understand the present perfect progressive better. And that is when we use the present perfect progressive without any mention of time. That usually expresses an activity or a general activity in progress recently or lately. For example, I've been thinking about looking for a different job. This one doesn't pay enough. Or all of the students have been studying hard. Final exams start next week. So here we don't have any mention of the time, but we're talking about general activities in progress recently. They're not done yet. We're not talking about something that finished. We're not talking about something that is over. Because remember, if you want to focus on the completion of an activity, use the present perfect simple, not the continuous. If you want to say, for example, I have studied hard for the exam, that means it's over. You're not studying anymore. You're still talking about something that you've done recently, but you're focusing on something that is over. But here, you're talking about something that is still in progress. I have been studying hard for the exam. Guess what? I haven't taken the exam yet. Obviously, this is the meaning. But if you say, I have studied hard for the exam, that means it's over. The exam is over, or at least your study for the exam is over. And that brings me to one last point to understand the difference between the present perfect progressive and the present perfect simple. When you want to talk about completion, you want to focus on that. Something is completed. That is present perfect simple. And that happens naturally when you talk about numbers. If you say, for example, I have read 3 books this month. Yes, it's this month, so I can still read more books. That's why I use the present perfect simple, not the past. Because the past, that means maybe for last month, I can say I read 3 books last month because last month is over and I can't add to the books I read last month. It's over. We're in this month now. But if I say I have read 3 books, can I say I've been reading 3 books this month? Technically, yes, I can say that. But that means I've been reading those books all at the same time. Well, it might be true in some cases, but usually you finish one book and then you move to the next. So here you're just talking about the number of something. I have finished reading. That's what you're trying to say. That's the meaning of I've read 3 books this month. But by the end of the month, I may still read more. But here the present perfect simple is used to convey this meaning, not the present perfect continuous. And with that being said, we are left with our past perfect simple and continuous. That is coming next, so stay tuned, and we will finish this episode and this chapter about the perfect and the perfect progressive tenses.
Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Looking to enhance your English skills while exploring a world of knowledge? Then English Plus Podcast website is just for you. Dive into diverse topics ranging from science to literature, history to business, and myths to modern insights. Each episode from our podcast or article from our magazine is a journey of learning and discovery, designed to not only improve your language skills, but also broaden your understanding of the world. Join us at English Plus Podcast, where language meets limitless learning. Tune in today and take your English to the next level. Visit EnglishPlusPodcast.com to start your journey. English Plus Podcast, language, learning, enlightenment. Never stop learning with English Plus. So to understand the past perfect, let me start with this example. Let me just draw a picture. Imagine this with me so that you can understand it. Sam came at 10 o'clock. Anne left at 9:30. So obviously when Sam came, he didn't see Anne because Anne left before Sam came, right? But here, if you want to express this idea in one sentence, you can simply say Anne had already left when Sam came. You can still use before and after and use past simple. You don't need the past perfect. You can say, for example, Anne left before Sam came, which is completely okay, which is completely normal. And to be honest, maybe it's more often that people use this rather than use the past perfect. But the past perfect has this meaning embedded within it. You're talking about an activity that was complete before another activity or time in the past. Remember when we talked about perfect tenses, they're not perfect because they're the best tenses out there. No, it's not about the best tense. The best tense is the best one you can use to express yourself in the best way possible. That's the perfect tense. But for perfect tenses, they're perfect because they link 2 points in time. That's the perfect part about the perfect tenses. But that aside, here, the 2 points we're linking are both in the past. That's why it's past perfect. The present perfect links 1 point in the past to the present, to now. But the past perfect, both points we're trying to link or to connect or to show the relation between these 2 points are in the past. And here, remember, the past perfect expresses an activity that was complete before another activity or time in the past. So here, if I say Anne had already left when Sam came, you understand that Anne left before Sam came. So in other words, Sam didn't see her. Maybe you just want to say Sam didn't see her, and that's fine. But you don't want to say Sam didn't see her because when he arrived, she was not there. She left before he arrived. Imagine you're trying to say something like this and you use 3 sentences to say it. Well, isn't it better just to say Anne had already left when Sam came? It's obvious. He didn't see her. She left before he came. All in one sentence. So that is the beauty of the past perfect. When you have a situation like that, you can use just one sentence, just one very small sentence, and it holds a lot of meaning. That's perfect, right? That's the perfect part of the past perfect. Now, for the form, of course, you always use had because it's past. There's no have and has. It's always had as an auxiliary verb, and the verb is always in past participle. And we talked about past participle before, so I don't want to talk about it again. You can check the earlier episodes in this series or in this grammar course, and you will know everything you need to know about the past participle. So now let's get back to this example I just gave you. Anne had left before Sam came. Well, here, if you say it this way, is it still possible that I can use the past perfect? Yes, of course, because the meaning is there. But here, the difference is I used before. So, can I say Sam left? Just past simple. Sam left before Anne came. Is that possible? Yes, obviously, it is possible. The meaning is clear. We didn't have to explain what we want to say in one or two more sentences, so that's fine. And here, in this situation, actually, we usually use the past simple because the past perfect is not necessary. Because the relationship, the timed relationship, is already clear. Before or after shows a clear relationship, a clear timed relationship, so there's no need for the past perfect, but it is still possible to use. So if you use it, it's not wrong. It is definitely right, and maybe it's a little bit more sophisticated, but we're not looking for sophistication here. We want to be clear, concise. We don't want to say too many things when just one thing serves the purpose or serves the meaning that we want to say. So here, if we say before, if we use before, the time relationship is clear enough actually, so we don't need the past perfect for that matter. We can use it, but we don't need it. I'll give you an example with after. After the guests had left, I went to bed. So when I went to bed, there was nobody at home, or the guests were not there. And that's obvious because you use after. So can I say after the guests left, I went to bed? Just use past simple? Of course you can. You can do that. Both sentences have exactly the same meaning. So it's up to you whether you want to use the past perfect or past simple. Now, there's something else that I will just mention because I will talk about it in more detail when we get to talk about reported speech. The past perfect is commonly used in reported speech. If the actual spoken words use the simple past, the past perfect is often used in reporting those words. I'll give you an example. Let's say that the direct speech or the actual spoken words, I lost my keys. Those were the words. If you want to report these words, you say, Jenny said that she had lost her keys. That is another usual use of the past perfect. But we will not get into any detail here because we will actually talk about reported speech later down the line in this course. So I don't want to talk about it. I just wanted to mention it here. Just keep it in mind, but we will definitely talk about it later. By now, you might be wondering, well, since we can use the past simple in most cases, or there is usually a way to avoid the past perfect altogether by just using after and before, making this time connection or relationship clear, and then we can use the past simple, why should we even learn to use the past perfect? Well, you don't have to, I admit. In most cases, in some cases, it is necessary. It is the only one. But in most cases, there is another option. You can resort to the past simple. Of course, make the time relationship clear, and then you can use the past simple. But let me tell you that the past perfect is often found in more formal writing, such as fiction. In fiction writing and informal writing, we use the past perfect more. Of course, we don't use it just anywhere. You have to be careful because that is a common mistake. When people learn the past perfect or learn about the past perfect, they start using it everywhere. Whenever they want to talk about something in the past, they use the past perfect. Don't do that. Just use it when it is relevant, when this is exactly what you want to say. But please just don't go around and talk about everything in the past using the past perfect. That's not the way to go, especially in speaking. That will sound weird. People don't usually use a lot of past perfect in speaking. But in writing, writers use a lot of past perfect. Of course, again, when it is okay to use past perfect. I'll give you an example. Bill felt great that evening. Earlier in the day, Annie had caught one fish and he had caught 3. They'd had a delicious picnic near the lake and then had gone swimming again. It had been a nearly perfect vacation day. Well, here, to be honest, in speaking, we use all of these in the past simple. Bill felt great that evening. Earlier in the day, Annie caught 1 fish. He caught 3. They had a delicious picnic. That's definitely possible. To be honest, that's even better. Even in fiction, that sounds weird. A lot of past perfect, not needed at all. But what I'm just saying is the past perfect is a little bit more formal and has a little more touch of formal writing such as fiction. But with that being said, that will be everything that I wanted to share with you about the past perfect. And that leaves me with one last thing, which is not used a lot, or at least not as often as other tenses, and that's the past perfect progressive. But we need to know about it because sometimes it is the perfect tense to use. It is the right tense to use. I'll give you a couple of examples. Eric finally came at 6 o'clock. I had been waiting for him since 4:30. The police had been looking for the criminal for 2 years before they caught him. Now here, just imagine the present perfect progressive, right? We talk about duration of time. When we say, for example, I have been waiting for you all day. And here, I'm still waiting, or at least you've just arrived, and I'm talking about it until now, until this very moment. But the point here is this duration of time in those two sentences ended in the past. I'm talking about something that happened over a duration of time in the past, but it's over now. I'm talking about something completely in the past. Remember, the 2 points we link in perfect, the past perfect, are both in the past. So here, Eric finally came at 6 o'clock. That's in the past, right? I had been waiting. Before that point in the past, I had been waiting for him since 4:30. And here, again, the police had been looking. That's past perfect progressive. The police had been looking for the criminal for 2 years. That lasted for 2 years, but then they caught him. So I'm not saying until now. It is not like the police have been looking for the criminal for 2 years and they still haven't been able to catch him. No, the criminal was caught and it's over. But I'm just saying what happened before that time for 2 years. The police had been looking for the criminal for 2 years. So the past perfect progressive emphasizes the duration of an activity that was in progress before another activity or time in the past. So I know this is not the most common meaning you have in mind when you want to speak or write, but you may need to use something like that. So it's a good idea to learn about it, right? But remember, again, I will have to say that the past perfect progressive is used infrequently. It is not used a lot compared to other verb tenses, of course. Now, there's another common situation where we can use the past perfect progressive, and that is similar to the present perfect progressive. Like, for example, in present perfect progressive, if you see someone out of breath, you ask this person, "What's wrong? Have you been running?" You're talking about something that expresses an activity in progress close to now. And this is the same for past perfect progressive. I'll give you a couple of examples. When Judy got home, her hair was still wet because she had been swimming. So it's the same idea, but the time relationship is in the past. When Judy got home, Judy is not home now. If I'm talking about Judy right now, and I can say her hair is wet, she has been swimming, that's fine. That's present perfect progressive. But if I want to say that about the past, if I want to link that to a past point like here, when Judy got home, her hair was still wet because she had been swimming. So the past perfect progressive also may express an activity in progress close in time to another activity or time in the past. I'll give you another example so that you can understand it better. I went to Ed's house after the funeral. His eyes were red because he had been crying. His eyes were red, not are red. I'm not talking about something in the present. I would use the present perfect progressive for that. His eyes are red because he has been crying, right? But here I'm talking about something that happened maybe a long time ago, maybe yesterday, doesn't matter. But it's in the past. His eyes were red because he had been crying. And since I told you something about the reported speech, I will say that again here. But remember, we will talk in detail about reported speech later down the line in this course. But here, we can use the past perfect progressive in reported speech. If the actual words are in the present perfect progressive, well, guess what? In reported words, we use the past perfect progressive. So, for example, if the actual words are, "I have been waiting for you," the reported words would be, "Leah told me that she had been waiting for me." Okay? So, that is about the past perfect progressive. Remember, we talked today about the present perfect and the past simple. We talked about the present perfect progressive, the past perfect, and the past perfect progressive. And that concludes chapter 2, which we talked about over 2 episodes because it's kind of big. In chapter 2, we talked about perfect tenses and perfect progressive tenses. So that will be everything for today. But don't forget, if you really want to make the information you used today part of your English, part of your everyday English, something you can use, go to my website. The link is in the description. Go to the custom post. You will find exercises that will help you understand and retain actually the information you learned here even better. You will learn from your mistakes. You will make a couple of mistakes. That's totally fine because that's the best way to learn. You learn from your own mistakes. And again, it's a perfect way to remember what we talked about, to check if you really understand what we talked about or not. You can go there right now, take the link, and take your English with it to the next level. And don't forget about the second link. The second link will take you to my Patreon page. I need you. This learning community needs you. If you want to help, I hope you're feeling generous enough to contribute, to become a patron, and help me keep this learning community, keep this podcast alive. I'm doing my best. I'm trying to add as much useful content as I can, but I need your support. That's the only way I can continue, and I hope you will hear me and you will continue to support me, just like those 15 patrons that I have right now. They believe in what I do and they support me for it. I hope there are other people, there are more people, because obviously you know that we need more, a lot more than this. And with that being said, let me thank you very much for listening to another episode from English Plus Podcast. This is your host, Danny. I will see you next time.